Hello everyone, this is the lecture video for the study guide for English 1 Honors on the short story unit. So just to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at doing here today, we are going to be going over the 5 common lit passages that are going to be on your test on Friday, April 3rd. For honor students, that's going to be stereotypes might make female hurricanes deadlier, Eleanor Roosevelt, not without her consent, an obstacle, ripe figs, and story of an hour. So you guys got your study guide on Wednesday, April 1st. It was available to you on Canvas. I'm going to go back to it real quick. I'm going to go into the standard page. It's the same study guide. Or no, it is not. It's different. Let's go to the honors page. And I'm going to go to the student view so you guys can see what your screen should look like. So when you log onto your Canvas pages on Wednesdays, you should have saw this link, Short Story Study Guide, Spring 2020. I'm going to pull this study guide up very briefly and talk about it with you. So here's your study guide. It goes through all 5 of the passages that you're going to be tested on Friday. And the statement, or it asks you to write a statement summarizing each of the following as they are presented in the passage. So you should be able to summarize the introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. First, to be able to do that, you're going to have to be able to pick out which paragraphs represent each part of the text, and then be able to write a 1-2 sentence summary statement that covers that particular section, that portion of the text. When you get to your test, if this comes up as a test question, it's going to be a multiple choice question asking you which statement best summarizes the introduction, which statement best summarizes the climax. So if you see introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, that's what I want you to do for all of the passages. We have those listed for. And it's going to be listed for the first 3 because those are short stories / text that fit that kind of format, and you can do that for. So make sure you've got that done. For stereotypes of hurricanes, I also want you to be able to tell me what is the purpose of that text, and then what is the theme or main idea of that text. Remember, those are 2 different things. So the purpose of the text, what goal do they hope to accomplish? And then the main idea or the theme, what overall message is the text sending, okay? Then we have conflict type and theme or main idea for the story of an hour and ripe figs. By conflict type, I mean man versus man versus self, versus society, or versus circumstance. Which kind of conflict do you see taking place in that particular passage? Again, it's going to show up as a multiple choice question. So if you've done it and it's right, then you should get the question right on your test. The Eleanor Roosevelt passage is a little bit different. It uses subtitles. So I want you to talk to me about the use of subtitles in that Eleanor Roosevelt passage. Think about why they would have done it. What is the effect of subtitles? The organization of the passage. What I'm looking for here is for you to explain chronological order to me. We've studied chronological order in the past this semester. So what I want to see you do is explain to me why chronological order would have been chosen. Why is it the best for this type of passage? I want you to discuss the title of the passage. Tell me why you think the author of the passage titled the passage the way that they did. And then theme or main idea, introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. And then the last passage was a poem called An Obstacle. I want you to be able to identify the shift, identify any and all uses of figurative language, identify any rhyme or rhyme scheme that you see fits to the poem, the theme or main idea, and the moral lesson. Okay? So that's what you should have done for your study guide. And very briefly today, what I'm getting ready to do is go through these passages one by one, summarize things for you, and kind of give you a hint as to what some of those answers should look like in your study guide. So let's start with stereotypes of hurricanes. The informational article covers how throughout history, researchers have been studying hurricanes and how deadly they are. Researchers found in their initial research that hurricanes with female names often have more deadly outcomes. It was believed at first that these outcomes were due to the fact that female names led people to believe that the hurricane was in fact more feminine and therefore somehow less severe. However, after further examining the facts, it was found that the information of the article was skewed due to the fact that when hurricanes were first named, all hurricanes had female names, which could have led to those elevated results. Remember, we read this passage in class. We've already kind of talked about some of these things. So, in breaking it down, the introduction is paragraph 1. The rising action will be paragraphs 2 through 4. The climax is paragraph 5. Falling action is paragraph 6 through 9. Resolution, paragraphs 10 through 11. And then the purpose of the article was informational, informing the audiences of gender biases and the results of the data. While the theme or main idea, this would have been one of your common lit discussion questions here. Students, like we said in class, should have mentioned both the findings of the study that the data shows, as well as that people perceive female hurricanes to be less dangerous. So make sure you talk about both of those sides of it, the data side of it and the skewed part, as well as gender roles and female stereotyping. And that's going to be it for stereotypes of hurricanes. Moving on to Eleanor Roosevelt, not without her consent. Eleanor Roosevelt was the longest serving First Lady in the United States from 1933 to 1945. During her husband Franklin D. Roosevelt's 4 terms as the 32nd President of the United States, she was First Lady during some of the most challenging periods of the 20th century in America, including the Great Depression and World War II. This text discussed her impact on the role of First Lady and the issues that mattered most to her. So, like I said, you want to talk about the use of subtitles in this passage and how it allows the reader to follow the progression of the article. The organization is chronological. It goes in order as the events would have happened in real time and in real life. The title of the passage, and as it relates to theme and foreshadowing, they're going to reuse this line, not without her consent, later in the passage. So I want you to explain the connection between the title and when it reoccurs later. And then introduction is again paragraph 1, rising action paragraphs 2 through 4, climax paragraphs 5 through 7, falling action paragraphs 8 through 13, resolution paragraphs 14 and 15, and that's it for Eleanor Roosevelt, not without her consent. Then we have the passage An Obstacle. This is a poem by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. It's about persistence and overcoming obstacles and challenges that we face in our daily lives. The speaker in the poem is climbing a mountain, creating a visual that aligns with the theme of the poem. The speaker makes multiple comparisons throughout the poem to help the reader relate to the challenging situation the speaker is facing. Gilman even writes in a sing-song manner, maintaining a rhythm in the poem that flows and adds to the rise and fall, similar to the theme, facing difficulties with ease and some that require more work. The shift in this poem that I'm particularly concerned with is going to be on lines 41 and 42. Here. Some of the figurative language that you may want to consider, personification and simile. I'll let you scan the poem and tell me where you see personification and simile taking place. There is a small rhyme. I don't know if you can go as far as to call it a rhyme scheme, but it's going to be AB, CB, DB. So if you look, where did it take place at? Right here. Passion, swore, him, sore, did, before. So A, B, swore, sore, and before. But because passion, him, and did don't rhyme, that's why they all get different letters. So AB, CB, DB. Theme and main idea for this poem, as we said, resilience, persistence, overcoming obstacles. And then a moral lesson, despite how big our problems are, they really are only as challenging as we make them out to be. And this can be seen down towards the bottom of the poem where it says, I took my hat and I took my stick, my load I settled fair. I approached that awful incubus with absent-minded air, and I walked directly through him as if he wasn't there. Charlotte Perkins, they're saying sometimes you just have to face it and get it over with, and you'll be surprised that you can actually make it through it. And then we have ripe figs. Ripe figs, in this particular passage, we have two characters who are both awaiting the arrival of seasonal fruit figs, Maman, Nane, and Babette. While both of these characters are awaiting the arrival of the fruit, each of them awaits in a different manner and for different reasons. Manan is patient and wise, and she knows that figs will ripen when they are ready, and she is in no rush to enjoy the fruit. However, Babette is young and impatient for the arrival of figs, not because she is eager to eat them, but because Maman has told her that she can go visit her cousins when the figs have ripened. This is a classic story about patience and a lesson in wanting something more does not make it easier to get. The introduction of this particular passage is going to be paragraph 1, rising action, paragraphs 2 through 3, climax, paragraph 4, falling action, paragraphs 5 and 6, resolution, paragraph 7, and then the conflict type is man versus self. Babette is impatient and spends the season waiting for the figs to ripen. And then theme or main idea, growing up takes time and patience. It cannot be rushed. And then the last passage for honors is going to be The Story of an Hour by Kate Chopin. This follows the tale of a woman who is told that her husband has been killed in a train accident. However, after learning of her husband's death in a brief moment of grief, the main character reveals her joy in her newfound independence, free from her husband, only to learn that, in fact, he did not die because he was not at the scene of an accident. When he appears back at home, the story ends as the wife dies of shock, made worse by a heart complication that they mentioned at the beginning of the story. So your introductions, paragraphs 1 and 2, rising action, paragraphs 3 through 9, climax, paragraphs 10 and 11, falling action, paragraphs 12 through 17, resolution, paragraphs 18 through 20. The conflict type, man versus self, Mrs. Mallard struggling with the reaction to her husband's death. And the theme or main idea is that newfound independence can bring the promise of freedom and happiness into a person's life. So honor students, if you have any questions, I suggest you go back and go into your module, look at the short story notes. I have filled those in a little bit more for us now with each of these slides related to the stories. So you can see some post-reading discussion questions, a brief snippet about what your short answer response should have looked like, some additional things for you to consider and think about that should help guide you through your short story study guide and your short story test. Let me know if you guys have any more questions, and good luck on your test on Friday.